Going to get rolling here, if you don't mind. Just a quick introduction. So my name is Michael Vidal. I work for a company called Thrivent Financial. I'm one of the advisors over there. This young lady here is Miss Bethany Pike. And, okay.
I'm an attorney with the Elrod firm, and we do exclusively estate planning and elder law, and I focus mainly on the estate planning side, so wills, trusts, power of attorney, and do some work with probate and guardianship.
Yeah. So, thanks for being here. And I wanted to start out, so several years ago, just got into my office. It was Thursday morning. Trying to get settled in. Hadn't even got my coffee yet. My phone rang. Little did I know that this phone call was going to completely change the way that I view financial planning, especially with people with special needs, children. So, answer the phone. Gentleman's name is Ed. Immediately, he's business. He starts going right down. My name's Ed so and so, and I'm the dad and guardian of my daughter, Joy, and he's married, so I'm quickly pulling up his information, so I'm getting the rundown. He lives in Hot Springs, he's in his 70s. Joy is in her early 40s at the time. He starts going into the story about just recently got a letter from the Arkansas Department of Health. I think that's right. And has been notified that his daughter, who is living in a community facility, she's going to be kicked out of her house. The home that she's known for the last 10 or 15 years. I think she had been in there. They had become aware that she had some assets that had come into her name, and he's wanting us to figure this out. And she's, we have only so much time to take care of this before they're going to have to figure out what to do with her, completely disrupt her life. Young lady has Down syndrome, and this was her world. So happy there. So started digging into it, and so evidently she had a life insurance policy that was taken out on her life back whenever she was 9 years old. This was a paid up policy that the parents were able to buy on her despite her having Down syndrome. So we have these kind of policies out there. But they wrote this policy on her, and the way that they wrote it the parents wrote it as an applicant, as opposed to what should have been just one box is all this took. It was written as an applicant, and because of that, at age 18, Miss Joy became the owner of this policy. Now, it stayed off everybody's radar because it still didn't have a lot of cash in this policy at that time. But over 30 years, the dividends that were being paid on this policy every year just slowly started getting bigger and bigger. So now, fast forward to my Thursday morning. So started digging into this and finding out, well, how do we solve this problem for this family? And he's frustrated. I'm not the first person he's called. So we're running out of time. Started digging into it, and it's like, well, let's just change ownership. Let's just have this taken out of Joy's name and reassigned to her sister, right? Good solution. We're thinking about let's cash out the policy. That's going to cause problems. So best thing, change ownership. Oh, mom and dad's got guardianship. We could do this. So they gave me the guardianship. Unfortunately, what he sent me was just the certificate, so very an abbreviated form of it. Submitted that, of course, got kicked back. No, we can't accept this, we need the full document. So he gets the full document, it was in a lockbox. Again, time is just every day, right? He gets the full document to me, I send that in, and they don't have the legal authority as a guardian to change financial contracts, right? Again, so now I'm reaching out to Miss Bethany. so luckily, this was one of the first cases that we had worked on together, and so Bethany and her team there at the Elrod firm started scrambling, trying to let's get emergency authority for guardianship. Let's write this thing correctly so that mom and dad can have the ability to sign that one form that's going to change ownership, take this policy out of Joy's name, assign it to her sister. So these people were rock stars and made this happen so quick, we were so thankful. But but they're still. So luckily, happy story, ended up being able to fix the situation, and Joy never got displaced, and everything turned out good. But I think, that story, it hit me so hard, just knowing that, this family had done everything. They had a trust in place. They had her taken care of, and felt like everything was just going to be perfect. If something happened to them and they both were called away, our daughter Joy's going to be taken care of, right? Not so much. So it really just hit home, like how important it is to be so diligent and check every single thing, whether it's accounts that you have or that your child owns, or if great grandma over here or a long lost uncle, if they're leaving anything to your child, how much of that can impact that child's life and where they're going to be. So we're going to be talking about a bunch of fun stuff today. So sorry for the story, but so just a quick rundown. We're going to be talking about certain things that we can start today that you can do immediately. You're not going to have to seek a professional in order to make some of these things happen. You can take this on. Doesn't cost anything to do some of these things. Other things that you may want to put on your radar, such as sitting down with Bethany and trying to figure out the legal side and what kind of things do we need to start putting into place. Also talk about the role of people like myself, financial advisors that are out there that are just willing to sit down with you and try to help you figure out not only what your child's life's going to look like down the road, but also how you're going to be taking care of yourself and taking care of brother and sister and these other people that you're taking care of, right? So let me talk about real quick before I turn this over to Bethany and start getting into the legal stuff. Wanted to talk about something that's called a letter of intent. Some people, there's other names for it, but so essentially what this letter is just you compiling your child's life and documenting it in every way that you possibly can think of. What you're trying to do is you're trying to, one, from date of birth to right now, what is your special needs child's life looked like? Is it, and what are your daily experiences? What does a week look like? What does a day look like? What's a morning look like? And you're trying to just pour everything that's in your head. Nobody knows your child better than you, and all the little things that might set them off, the things that they love and that just brightens their day. These are the things that we need you to get on a piece of paper. And so that if you're taken out of here, if you step off a curve and a bus takes you out, we need that knowledge. We need that next caregiver needs what you have to make sure that your child is always gonna be loved and cared for, and their life's not gonna be disrupted. So letter of intent. So literally documenting, from birth to now, what their life has looked like, just what that story is. Start talking about like routines, things that they like, things that they don't like. If you take, if somebody helps your daughter take her jacket off after school, if we know that that's going to just, if she cannot have somebody, help her with that, and that's going to set her off, and it's going to just be a bad day, then people need to know that, right? Do we like to sleep on our left side? Is there a stuffed animal? Is there, is there food that we have to have for comfort, or just all these things that and then just going down and just go through the list. Like medical history, any legal documents that you have in place, not only things that but things that you want to plan for, and things that you envision down the road, because not only are you writing the story from birth to now, we're also from now till your child's last day, right? So you gotta plan that kind of stuff out. You gotta what is your vision? Where do you want them to live after they're if they're able to leave the house at age after high school, or if they're in school, and what's education look like? What is all their diagnoses? Are you following me? So just literally everything, and where do you want them to live way down the road, and who's going to be taking care of them when you're no longer here? Do you want them living in like a social setting? Do you want them living with a brother or sister or a family member? All of that, you can do this today. It's not. Sometimes some people are hesitant. You've already done the first step if you haven't started doing anything. Hopefully everybody here has already started doing things. But just being here is the first step, if you haven't done anything. But this is an easy one that you can take time, and maybe over the next, days or weeks or months. And this isn't something that's a one and done. You gotta.
It's like, gonna be this big.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if it's gonna change often.
Yes,
Like,
we'll abbreviate it for the document, but then say, see this notebook or see folder or whatever,
Okay.
and have thumb drives with the full documents with all the disclosures, because your medical folder may already
Yeah.
be that big, So where that is, but at least we're gonna kind of sum up everything so somebody can sit down and say, oh,
okay.
here's bullet points. These
Okay.
are the touch points that I need to know right now.
Like I can write a book if you need.
I know you can write a book, yeah. But really, and then I think one of the important things is to be able to share this with family members, with people that are in your child's life that you feel like they need to know this, in case I'm no longer here. At least where's this document? Where can it be found? It should be retained with your legal documents. And speaking of legal documents, I'm gonna let Miss Bethany talk about all the legal stuff. Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to talk about some legal topics and that are of particular concern for families who have children with special needs. And so I'm going to start by talking about the last will and testament, because that's the most common estate planning document and what most people are familiar with. And so the will is your written instructions for what you want to happen if you were to pass away. And so the will could be very simple, or it may need to be more complex. But in any will, you're going to specify who you want to wrap up your affairs, and you're going to specify who you want to receive your assets. And this is also the place where you nominate who you want to be the guardian for any child that you have who may need a guardian. And so the guardian is the person who has the legal ability to care for your child and have custody of your child. And so guardianship is a court process, so it's a judge would appoint this person to be the legal guardian over an incapacitated person. And so I'll kind of sidestep for a second in case anybody has questions, because I get this a lot, is do I need to look into guardianship now if my child is still a minor? And usually you don't have to, because whatever you need to sign off on or approve, you can do that as the authority as their parent. It does come up if maybe the child's disability was caused by an accident and they received a settlement check, then that parent would need to be named as the legal guardian to accept that payment for them. But other than that, it really doesn't come up that often if the child's a minor. Once they turn 18 is when you might want to look into setting up guardianship. And so a lot of times people call and say, my daughter is so sweet and impressionable, and I'm just worried that somebody's going to manipulate her into making bad decisions and she won't understand. And so as a protection that, they still need to be the one in charge of making those decisions, they want to go ahead and get guardianship in place. And so that comes up. It also comes up where people have told them that they need to look into guardianship. So that's a good indication it's time. People call and say that, the group home has said that a guardian needs to sign off on this particular action or something like that. So if somebody at a facility or a group home or somebody tells you that you need to look into guardianship, that's a good indication it's time. But you may never have to look into that. And I will mention that if they are an adult, then you may be able to set up power of attorney documents instead of having to go through guardianship. And so what power of attorney is where you appoint a legal agent to act for you while you're living. And so the agent you could have it set up for healthcare decisions and financial decisions. The person does have to be 18 years old to set up these documents. And then they also have to have legal capacity to set up the documents. And so it just depends on the person's circumstances. So disability and incapacity are, of course, two different things. So you could be disabled but still have capacity to sign legal documents. So the person does need to understand who they are, who you are, if they have any assets, if they have a bank account or a car, and they have to understand that they want you to help take care of them. And so they do have to have legal capacity, but so if they don't, then you have to look into guardianship. And then another thing with another point to mention about the power of attorney is that the power of attorney cannot go against the wishes of whoever named them. And so if your daughter names you as her agent, and then she needs to go to the hospital and she needs treatment and she doesn't want that treatment and she wants to go home, you as the power of attorney can't make her get that treatment or make her stay there, because you have a duty of loyalty to carry out her wishes. So in that case, you would need to look into guardianship court, because a guardian has a duty of care to make sure that person's taken care of. So if you need to go against their wishes, you have the legal authority to do that. So that might be a time when you look into guardianship instead. And so now I'll segue back into the will conversation. And so, like I said before, in the will is where you specify who you want to receive your assets. But you have to be very careful with how people receive assets, because if you leave somebody to receive something outright, whether it's through a will or maybe a beneficiary designation on an account or something like that, if they're going to receive it outright when you pass away, then there's a good chance they're going to lose their benefits if they're on SSI or they're on Medicaid, because their assets just got too high for that. So there are ways to protect against that, and the most common way is by setting up a supplemental needs trust or special needs trust. Those terms can be used interchangeably, but it's a great tool to be able to pass on assets without jeopardizing somebody's
Or is
benefit.
the two names supplemental needs trust or a
Special needs trust.
special?
And so I'll kind of pause for a second and explain what a trust is, because you may be familiar with it or may never had much dealings with it. And a trust is just a legal entity that holds assets. And so any trust that's set up will have three roles. The first is the grantor, or there's a creator of the trust. The second is there will be a manager of the trust or a trustee. And the third will be there will be a beneficiary of the trust. So if I set up a trust, then I'd be the grantor. If I say that Michael's going to manage whatever's in the trust, he would be the trustee. And if I say whatever's in this trust will be used for the benefit of my children, they would be the beneficiaries. So Michael is the trustee, is the only one who can access the assets, but he can only make distributions for the benefit of my children because they're the beneficiaries, and he has to follow the guidelines set in that trust. So that's any trust that's set up. And so the most common type of trust that we do is a revocable living trust, and that is set up mainly to avoid probate. So probate is the long, drawn-out court process that you go through if you pass away with assets in your name. And so a lot of times people come in and want to avoid that. So we set up just the regular revocable living trust. And so it's a good tool to use, but that's a different document from the supplemental needs trust or the special needs trust. And so the special needs trust is the one that's set up, and basically it's a document that allows a person who is disabled and receiving government assistance to receive assets or have assets and it not disqualify them from their benefits. And so the real reason that people actually come to me and set up those types of trusts is that they're concerned because, what's going to happen if something does happen to them? Who's going to take care of their children? Who's going to make sure that they're provided for? Who's going to make sure that they don't lose their benefits? And make sure that they're free from abuse and neglect. And so they have all these concerns, and so the supplemental needs trust is a good tool to help you accomplish those goals, because you get to make sure that you put the right people in the right positions to make sure that your wishes are carried out and that they get to stay on their benefits. So it's good to be proactive with those things and have the plan already set up. And so I'll kind of mention the interaction between a will and a trust, a revocable living trust, and the supplemental needs trust. So at our office, if we prepare a will or a trust for anybody, unless the client specifically says they don't want this, we're going to include supplemental needs trust provisions in there as a backup to say, if ever at any time someone's receiving a share of our estate or our trust and they're disabled and they're receiving government assistance that has an asset restriction, to funnel it through the supplemental needs trust, because you just don't know. I mean, you could down the road have grandchildren that you didn't anticipate that at the time you set up the plan who would really benefit from those terms. So we set it up as a safety net in all of our documents. You can also set up a separate supplemental needs trust, so where you have your own plan, but then everything's that you want that child to receive will be directed to this standalone special needs trust. And so the benefit of doing that is that maybe multiple people want to provide for your child. So, there are grandparents who want to leave an inheritance, or aunts and uncles, or maybe it's a divorced couple and both parents want to leave something to make sure the child's cared for. So it's very common for people to set up a separate standalone trust for that purpose. But the important thing is that you just have those provisions set up so that if you do want to leave assets to them, it doesn't affect their benefits. And another thing that I'll mention about the supplemental needs trust is that it is very restrictive in how and when distributions can be made. So you do want to be very careful with who you name as the trustee, because you don't want a distribution to affect the benefits. And so if a client comes in and they're just a regular person, they don't do trust work for a living, then usually the first place that I'll point them, it's called Special Needs Alliance. I don't know if y'all are familiar with that organization, but they have a really helpful website, specialneedsalliance.org. And specifically, they have a handbook on there. It's called A Trustee's Guide for Supplemental Needs Trusts. And it's really great because it talks about the different types of benefits and the difference between Medicare versus Medicaid or SSI or SSDI, and kind of what distributions count for each of those and what's safe to distribute from the trust. And so it can give you a good idea of how this trust would work and how distributions could be made for your child. So it's a really good resource. It's on the internet and it's under their additional resources tab on there. So in case that's helpful. And then another thing is that you can consider naming a third party to serve as the trustee, so like a corporate fiduciary. So and the good thing about that is that one is that it's independent, and secondly, it is they're licensed, bonded, there's oversight, so it can be a really good solution to making sure that everything's taken care of. And so most financial institutions have trust departments, but Thrivent definitely has an excellent department. And so if you were wanting to talk to a trust officer and kind of get an idea for what would this look like and what would your role be and those types of things, then I know that you could probably get you in contact with a trust officer with Thrivent, but something to consider to somebody that could serve in that role.
And they need to be well versed in,
Yeah.
in special needs trusts and what qualifies as good distribution. So, any questions real quick before we keep on moving on? I know Bethany was throwing a lot at you.
That letter of intent, is that just informal, or like, do I need to have it
Very-
notarized and
it
given
is.
off to all
This
my
is
lawyers? And like how?
Not at all.
Okay,
This
it's just
is completely
for
informal.
your information
Yes.
for anybody that needs. Okay.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of different templates out there. We have information here with like business cards and all that, but I'd be happy to connect you with different websites that have some excellent
But
templates.
it's like nobody has to follow it. Like if I died
No.
tomorrow and they found my letter of intent,
No.
hopefully they would honor it. But it's
Yes.
nothing.
There's no legally binding. It's not notarized. There's no cost to it.
Okay.
I think just one of the nice things about it, and I think some of the templates that I've seen, it starts out with a little paragraph saying that this is my letter of intent. It's not a legally binding document, but these are the intentions for the continued care of my child.
Gotcha.
So yeah, they're really good. So on special needs trusts, these assets can be utilized throughout the child's life now. So like distributions can be taken out and to provide for care throughout the child's life, right?
Absolutely.
Another segue, that I wanted to jump into was maybe accounts that are a little bit more accessible, maybe like savings accounts. So a lot of people, you probably, like in our last session, somebody said, well, I had, my 2 sets of grandparents were wanting to set up savings accounts for my child, and of course almost the whole room was like, no, don't do that. But there are accounts out there that are specific for children with disabilities, or it doesn't have to be a child with disability. It can just be any individual with disabilities. So this account is called an ABLE account, ABLE. So it's Achieving Better Life. What's the E? Experience. Yeah. I always forget the E. Yeah. Yes. So Achieving Better Life Experience. So these kind of accounts were set up back in 2014. It took them just a few years before it actually started catching wind, and a lot of the states started bringing these kind of accounts, into being. And these kind of accounts they're so nice in that they're tax exempt. So it has tax exempt growth, right? So you have more power of growth potential in there because it's not taxable. The distributions are tax-free as well, as long as they're qualified disabled distributions. So these kind of accounts can hold up to $100,000 without going against their government benefits that they're receiving. So they're excluded from that. So it's just a really nice place to. $15,000 on an annual basis can go into these kind of accounts, and so it can come from multiple sources. So say your child is working and they're earning income, and so those income dollars can go into this account. Say you have family members that want to maybe do a monthly contribution into this account, or they just want to gift one time, per year, or whenever funds are available. So all these assets, so there's a limit, it's $15,000 total from all sources, it's not just per individual.
Per year.
Per year, yes. So it may take a few years, especially if you're taking out as you're putting in, it may take some time to grow.
Is there a limit as to how many times you can pull out of that during the year?
Now, there's different ways that you can access the money. They can even issue like a debit card where you can, it gives that individual just a little bit more autonomy.
So what would be the difference between your special needs trust if they can pull out of it?
Yeah.
Because I was only under the impression that you use the special needs trust. I guess that for
At debt,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's a lot of
I
people
never
think
really
that,
thought about
yeah,
that
yeah,
because,
yeah.
But my parents have put things in that are already there
Yeah.
for our son.
As long as they're qualified.
So you have to qualify.
For an able account.
No, what you're pulling it out for has to qualify, has to
Oh.
fall under a certain category that you can use that money for,
Can't just
correct?
buy
Yeah.
a car or something.
Right.
Yeah.
So similar with the ABLE account and the supplemental needs trust is that if you pull money out of either of those, then it does need to be for a qualified reason.
Mhm.
So usually the best option is a combination of both of those. So you wouldn't
Yeah.
say that the ABLE account would take care of everything or that the supplemental
Right.
needs trust would take care of everything. The nice thing about the supplemental needs trust is that you can leave unlimited assets to this type of trust in a lump sum. So if you are passing away and you have a house that's worth $150,000, then that can go directly into that supplemental needs trust. And whereas there's a restriction of $15,000 per year on the ABLE account,
Sure.
and it's there. But there are differences that are where it's nice for the person, like Michael was saying, that they have autonomy with the ABLE account because with the supplemental needs trust, a separate trustee has to be in.
And has to approve
And
it,
they have
yeah.
to, right.
Exactly.
Right.
And so you could already see that it's maybe not as accessible in a trust.
Oh, sure.
Whereas if I'm carrying around a debit card and I know that I'm to be able to pass that on to even if we had a child that has the ability to go out and purchase things for as long as there are certain things that they can purchase, and there's literally a list of approved.
Do we have banks that are doing
Yeah,
that?
but regions
Here
or like how do-
in Arkansas? Because at one
So
point
that-
we didn't.
So you would apply for this online, okay?
So
it's-
we still don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kansas.
or-
Yeah.
So no, Arkansas has able
But I'm
accounts
just
now.
saying that where I send my able money for our son is another state, Iowa or.
Yeah, it's probably because Arkansas didn't have it. Check out Arkansas now, because you can transfer from there into Arkansas. Arkansas has almost all of the benefits that some states are kind of restrictive on. Arkansas, from my research, have all the boxes checked.
I'm just saying Arkansas able, where it's administered out
Oh.
of is another state.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it doesn't matter, I mean, it just happens to be where it
We
is. I
don't
mean,
drive there.
Yeah, Arkansas able is in Arkansas, but
Yes.
yeah,
I'm with you.
there's some, whatever their vendor is in another state.
Right, so it's managed outside, and it's whoever's managing that. There's
I called the Arkansas able number, somebody answers at Arkansas able, but it's in another state.
Yeah. And the nice thing about those accounts, so it's not just a savings account, with it maybe a small interest on it. It's you can designate how that money is invested, so it can be invested in like mutual funds for long-term growth potential, and so there's really a lot of, and you get to choose all those options.
And that reminds me of coming back to the difference between the supplemental needs trust and the ABLE account is that the ABLE account, you do need to have a state payback provision where it's whatever's left in that account when the person passes away needs to go back to the state if they provided any care for them. If it is a supplemental needs trust that you set up for the benefit of your child and your money is going to fund it, then you don't have to put that state payback provision in there. So it's called a third party supplemental needs trust. And so it's nice because you could say that, this money will go to Susan upon my death, but if she passes away before it's all used, then it could go to our other children or to this charity or something else. So that's another difference between those types of.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So you really don't, I guess that, to be able to have all of that, $100,000 at the limit all the time is, I guess it just depends on the situation, what
I'm
the
getting a
intent
text
is.
that we have 5 minutes.
Oh,
Okay.
very good, very good.
Hypothetically, if you get to $100,000 in your able account, could you move it over to your special needs trust?
So it if you are,
Probably
so
not.
then it would switch to a different type of, you could set up a different type of trust that would be a first party supplemental needs trust. And so that one can have, it doesn't matter how much is in there, but there would need to be that state payback provision. So it could be an option where if it needed to be, or they may just want to spend
Go
it.
spend it.
Yeah, I was about to say, they would
Yeah,
spend
but
it. If it got really large.
As long, but I'd be questionable about that, because like if any distributions from that has to be qualified, and in other words, you're
Oh,
gonna
that's
be,
right, you'd have
you're
to
gonna be
spend it on
penal,
something.
you'd have to
That is
spend it on
spend it,
something, you couldn't
right?
just
Yeah,
move it to
yeah.
another account.
Yeah,
Or you're gonna have tax penalties.
right, you wanna spend
Yeah.
it, that's the whole purpose.
Right, that's the purpose of that account, and there's gonna be that payback, so it's not like you're gonna avoid that payback.
Yeah, either way. So if you
Yeah.
put in.
Please,
Yeah, yeah.
could you give an example of some things that are qualified to purchase and some things that are not qualified to purchase?
Oh gosh, so like, geez, that list was just so long, so almost everything would, as long as it's caring for your
Groceries,
child.
rent,
Yeah.
like those kind of
Yeah,
like day-to-day things.
yeah, housing, transportation, clothing.
Haircut.
If it's haircuts, just personal maintenance, hygiene. If they need wheelchairs or modifications to the house for. I mean, there's literally.
So I guess the trip to Cancun's out of the question.
No, you travel is actually, you can spend it on travel, you can spend it on entertainment,
So yeah.
electronic devices, cell phones, insurance, things like that.
Yeah.
So
So it's,
could purchase
as long as it's
my
for the
daughter-
kid and they're going to benefit from it,
My
then
daughter is
then
able to live off on her
maybe
own. I could
maybe
purchase
maybe a
her
portion of
her own
that could pay for
place.
that.
We could purchase her a vehicle so she could go for transportation.
Yeah, the only thing to worry, some things, so the idea of it is it's meant to supplement the government assistance. So if it's something that the government would cover, then it's not necessarily that if you spend it on something that, let's say that rent was, you weren't supposed to spend it on rent because that could have been covered by the government, then it's not that they're gonna lose their benefits, it's just they'll reduce it and see that as that they received it, so yeah.
So I know we just have a couple more minutes before this session ends, so I just want to touch on just the role of financial advisors. So find somebody. These are complicated subjects, especially just adding this additional with your special needs child, that makes it just even more concerning. So we need to make sure that we're taking care of not only your special needs child, but we want to be taking care of you and your spouse and your other kids, and what is retirement going to look like, and am I going to be able to live the retirement that I want and still be able to maintain and take care of my child, and so we look at all the what ifs, all the things that can derail you if something happens to you immediately. We want to make sure that your child's lives, all of them, are still going to be taken care of. It's all the what ifs and what the could be's, but we need to know you now. We need to know what your plans are, what your situation is. So we can't really give any kind of advice, but we'd love to sit down. I think that was another question that popped up, was just what does all this cost? So we meet with individuals for free. Both myself and Bethany's office does the same thing. Free consultations, just sit down, get to know you, see how we can help you. You may already have a lot of stuff in place and you're happy with those relationships, but maybe just having another second set of eyes or ears, working with teams of people that are well versed in these kind of subjects. What am I missing? Have I checked everything? Did I miss that one box 20 years ago that's going to derail my whole plan? And that's the fear, I guess, because every plan it's only, no plan is going to be perfect. It's going to be evolving. It's going to be changing. But I think that's what you got to do, is just try to do the best that you can right now. Put in place. Stop procrastinating if you're procrastinating. Visit with people and say, hey, I just want to have a conversation and find out what I need to start putting into place
But as
now.
those things evolve, do y'all keep in touch with the individual and let them know that hey, there's this change gonna happen? Are you interested in it? Do y'all keep up with that, or do we need to?
It depends on how that relationship is. So some of my clients, I have this ongoing relationship, so it's almost like I'm on retainer, and to be able to come contact them, and I'll set it on my calendar. And so whenever that dings, then I'm going to reach out to you and say, hey, we need to get together because this is a point in time that we needed to address. And so I think that's where financial advisors can really play a good role, is because they can be that hub, that communication center to help you start thinking about, have I contacted everybody that I need to, and that's our resource.
So is Thrivent a financial planning company?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I just
Yep.
want to make sure.
Yep, so we're headquartered out of Minnesota, so not a lot of people have heard of us down
Okay.
here. We're a faith-based financial company, we're a not-for-profit, but we've been doing this since 1902. I love the company and what we're all about. Because we're a not-for-profit, all of the money that we would normally pay in taxes, we have to do benevolence with, so we have to do good with it. So last year, over $300 million was given back to churches, schools, and nonprofits from Thrivent. So it's what's called a fraternal benefit society. There's not a lot of them like us, and I probably wouldn't be in this industry if I wasn't working for Thrivent. So,
Thank you so much.
yeah, well, grab all our information. There's a lot of goodies. Fill your purses with the hand sanitizer. I know